My main goal truly was to teach my kids to love learning.
But don't put that pressure on you of like, this is happening the rest of our lives, because you might do it and then really dislike it.
You have to be gracious with yourself. How little can I do and still call it homeschool?
The lazy homeschool
homeschool method.
This made the introduction to homeschool so easy and simplified for me, and that helped a lot.
Yeah.
I swear that's
like an ostrich.
chicken back there.
There's an ostrich on your roof.
Hi guys, welcome back to my video. Amanda's with me here today again. We just took a little break from painting DIY projects that we've been working on. This video is a part 2, and part 1 is basically preparing my house for homeschool this year. I have been putting Amanda to work all morning, laboring away on my new armoire and a chalkboard wall. So we're taking a step away to jump into a Q&A portion that we thought would be really fun. I asked you guys on Instagram, what questions or concerns do you guys have about homeschool? And so we want to answer those today. Disclaimer, we're not experts. We're just moms.
Just like you.
Amanda's been in this game longer than me, so that's why she's really here to help. She's got a lot of knowledge and experience.
So I've homeschooled for a total of 4 years. I have 3 kids. So my oldest, Oliver, I started his pre-K for 2 years. Then we sent Oliver to a private school for a year while I homeschooled Lela, my daughter. We decided to take a break. I had to go back to work and I couldn't juggle 30 hours of work plus homeschool at the time. So they all went to public school. So my older 2 will be staying in public school for another year. I will just have my 4-year-old home with me. I've done everything.
You've done everything. Okay, so my background is very simple. You guys already know my kids. The thing about Jace is that his birthday comes after the September 1st cutoff. So this next year, even though he's turning 5 in September, he won't actually be in school. So I am gonna do another year of homeschool with him. I did homeschool with him last year. That was my first experience with homeschool. After that, my goal is to probably do 1 to 2 years with each of my kids before I have them join public school. And we're in an area that has a really great public school, so we do wanna try it out. So we'll see how we feel, and then we'll assess from there, which is kind of like what we share in common, just a no pressure perspective of like seeing where you're at and then assess from there. It doesn't have to be the same every single year.
Yeah, I'm very big on you can always change your mind.
One thing that we really wanted to talk about, it really goes well off the last video we filmed, which is my homeschool prep and kind of going a little bit of the extra mile with some of the things I'm doing. Like, I found this armoire and I want to organize all my homeschool stuff in it. I'm making a chalkboard. What we want to share is you don't have to do all of that. I think that everyone's approach is going to look very different when it comes to homeschool, and maybe that's even why many people have been intimidated to start homeschooling. It's not all going to look like my way. You guys know me, I love organization, I love DIYs, I love like thrifting and creating, so for me this makes sense and this is how I can show love to my children.
I like it really simplified. I think part of that was because when I first started homeschooling, I had to juggle working while homeschooling, and so I couldn't do so much, but also as I started homeschooling, I learned that I really like it stripped down. I don't like overcomplicating my life. I actually prefer to kind of be a lone wolf too a little bit with homeschooling. While I like doing play dates and I like learning from other people, I find that I really want to give my kids as much of my attention as I can, so I don't do co-ops. I'm not opposed to doing them in the future, but it did feel like it didn't make sense for me to be out and about when I have to be back home at a certain hour to get a few hours of work in anyway. So for me, it's like, how little can I do and still call it homeschool?
The lazy homeschool
method. My main goal truly was to teach my kids to love learning. And so I didn't feel the need to work so hard on having organization be perfect or all my curriculum be perfect, because I wanted to be able to have some space to add things like sewing or baking or cleaning and teach my kids life skills and morals as well.
All right, we're gonna start off with just a very basic question. What's the best age to start? Kindergarten, preschool? I started Jay's earlier than I needed to, and that was only because we didn't put him in a preschool program. We just didn't feel like I needed to. I was home with the kids. I had the availability to be home with them, so I started him last year in like almost like a preschool.
It does depend on your kid, because the reality is some kids are not ready to learn. For instance, my oldest son, when we started considering homeschool for him, he was very resilient and was not super interested. Once I picked up on the fact that he actually wasn't ready to enjoy learning, because that was a big thing. If he's not enjoying learning, I just shifted into reading more with him and using a lot more like manipulatives, whether it was like a letter puzzle, or we had these like little felt numbers that I would pull out, and these palm balls and colors. So it was just
a lot of learning through play.
It was learning through play.
Actually sit and do the lesson, it can take a while.
It's very different. I was afraid of making him hate learning. If you start drilling into your kid and pushing them, they can end up really pushing back against you, and then you create this environment where there's just tension in homeschooling, and then you'll wonder, why does my kid not like it? And it could start very young, so don't force it. So another thing is, you don't have to do this like standard typical school curriculum type thing, especially if you're starting on the younger side, 3 to 4 years old. Nature walks is part of homeschooling. Exploring outside, talking about the seasons, talking about weather.
Somebody said, I would love to know where to start. What's the schedule? I'm so overwhelmed and lost. I totally felt like that before I started. I was like, I don't think I'm meant to homeschool. I don't know where to even start.
Every state is different in terms of what the requirement is for public school. It is helpful to know what the restrictions are with your state or country. Specifically in our state, you don't have to begin public school for your child until first grade, actually. It helps you to kind of form, when do I want my kid to be ready in case I ever had to put him in a public school.
I think in everyone's head we're thinking, I'm not an expert, or I don't have a background in teaching. A lot of people doing this are former preschool teachers.
You say, what do I do? What if I do it wrong?
Yeah,
You know,
just
the
feeling
fear, what
like
if I mess it up?
you're not qualified to do it, but if you have a desire to, and you want to, and you think it's going to work with your kid, then you are qualified.
It's so easy to look at everything that you need to be doing. Should my kid be doing classical, Montessori, Charlotte Mason? Like, there's so many different types of homeschooling. You have to kind of just take a step back and stop listening to what everybody else out there is saying. I really think you have to know your temperament and your kids' temperaments. Because if you guys are more introverted, a co-op might not be for you. If you like memorization, then you might want to go with the classical conversations method of homeschool. There are so many ways to do school. So before you even jump in and pick a curriculum and sign up for all the homeschool opportunities, figure out what are you like and what are your kids like. What can you handle? What's your threshold? Is there a certain amount of days out of the week you can get out of the house and still feel sane, or do you need to be home every day in order to feel stable? As far as scheduling goes, it truly depends on the age of your child, because a pre-K child might not need more than 20 to 30 minutes a day, but they also might be super interested. Their temperament might be really willing to learn. They're very eager. They're hungry for it. In that case, you might go closer to an hour, but it does help to know what the requirements are in your state as far as benchmarks the kids are expected to hit by the end of that grade. And I worked my way backward from that. From there, I was able to grab which subjects they were supposed to be learning, and then take a look at the skills that had to be hit and start to figure out, okay, is this curriculum hitting that? And if it's not, how can I supplement that with something else that I'm adding in order to be able to achieve those different benchmarks? Again, if your kid is in pre-K, that's not going to apply.
Once you make the commitment and then you assess your schedule, your temperaments, as you discussed, it's time to just jump in and go for it. And you know what? It's okay if you do it half the year and then you change your mind. Take it in increments. Maybe you just set yourself a 3-month goal. From there, another 3 months if you feel good and you continue. But don't put that pressure on you of like, this is happening the rest of our lives, because you might do it and then really dislike it. And that's okay if you guys have to change things along the way.
It truly is on-the-job training. If you've never homeschooled before, for you to jump in and figure out, how do I teach and mom and run this household and make sure I'm creating an environment that my kid likes to learn in, like, you have to be gracious with yourself. So you might start a schedule and figure out it's not the right fit for you. That's okay. If you have a friend who recommends a schedule, go ahead and give it a try, but also be very flexible and understand that you might have to make some changes as you go. That's totally normal.
Okay, we have a question that says, best Christian-based curriculum and how early can you start homeschooling? So we both have used the Good and Beautiful curriculum, so that's really what we're able to speak on. I know there's a lot of other Christian curriculums out there that might be really good options for you, and I encourage you to explore them. Personally, especially for kids so young, 3, 4 years old, and this being brand new to me and feeling so intimidated by homeschool, this made the introduction to homeschool so easy and simplified for me. And it tells you exactly what to do in the book. It is literally giving parents a script to read to their kids. It includes beautiful art and incorporates faith and good morals.
Another thing that's helpful is occasionally there are homeschool conventions in different areas that will allow you to get a glimpse at the different curriculums that are available without having to buy them. You'll just pay for that fee to get into the convention. I would say if you have friends who have tried a few different curriculums, it really helps to just go over to their house, take a peek at what it is before you go buy things. Try to learn about 2 to 3 different types of curriculum to figure out what would make sense for you, and be ready to make a change in the future if you're finding that it's not a good fit anymore.
So we did get a few questions on someone who said she's a working mom. How many hours per day do you have to commit to for a kindergartner or first grade? Somebody else asking about schedule, is it better to do school every day or a few days?
So for my kindergartners, I would most likely stick to about an hour max, and it was really because we were incorporating more fun subjects, artistic subjects like the baking and the crafting. There were days where it was maybe as short as 45 minutes. And then for my first grader, I would say it would vary between an hour to 2 hours, and that was because we were doing worship, we were doing devos, baking, outdoor exploration.
And then for preschool, sometimes I spend as little as 15 minutes, maybe up to 30 to 45 minutes if the attention span is higher.
Yeah.
But also with that, you just want to be very gentle and careful and read your kid to see, are they able to continue and do more, or are they about to have a meltdown for some reason and you need to just pause and take a break. And I would really keep it low pressure.
And also ride the wave. If there's a day that they are really liking it and they're loving reading and they're mommy, one more book, take a little bit of extra time, because not every day flows like that.
Right.
And there's going to be another day where they're not in the mood, or they're sick, or you're tired, and you won't be able to do any of that.
Is it better to do school every day or a few days?
Yeah. I've tried both. One year I did it that it was 3 days and it was pretty concentrated, which is why we got closer to 2 hours sometimes. When I was homeschooling my son, I had all 5 days. And so we would do a very short 5 days a week thing. There is so much flexibility in terms of how many days a week you do it, what time of the day you do it, and so it doesn't have to be the full 5 days. And as a matter of fact, if you are busy on a weekday, you could homeschool on a Saturday.
Yeah, so year-round versus school year.
Yeah.
That's up to you as well.
For sure. I do think it is helpful to maintain some level of learning in the summertime if you are doing just a school year, whether you're pulling out the handwriting book a couple times a week, making sure that you're taking the time to read to your child, that your child is also reading to you.
What do you do when your child is refusing to do their work because it's challenging? This was something I struggled with, but Jace was more like 4, which is pretty young and really hard to get them to sit down and give you their attention for longer than 5 minutes. So we really eased into it. Like, it started off pretty slow. And so we would incorporate snacks into the learning, and that helped a lot.
Yeah.
I swear that's
like an ostrich.
chicken back there.
There's an ostrich on your roof.
It became this thing where he associated the gummies with homeschool. So he was excited to sit down, eat his gummies, and do homeschool. It was all happening at once. So that was honestly how I got him to really enjoy and like homeschool. If it wasn't gummies, it could have been something else. Maybe his favorite toy. We'd incorporate like his Batman into the lesson for the day.
I remember asking Oliver, my son, I would say, what are you interested in? And giving him this feeling like he's making a decision about his schooling. And that made him feel responsible and big, that, I want to learn about, I don't know, whatever animal that day. And so we'd have books in the house, we'd pull those out. I think giving your child this sort of feeling that they are partnering with you instead of you're schooling them really gives them a little bit of ownership. And oftentimes the things we take ownership over are the things that we work harder on. Another thing, and this is just keeping it real, if you plan on homeschooling your kid long term, the reality is that if you don't set that standard early on of what the expectations are, it's going to be hard later on as they age as well. And so when I started homeschooling my son, realizing, well, I would like to do this longer term. And so even though he was being resistant, it was a fine balance between remaining positive and making sure he loved learning, and also letting him know, like, you're going to be a little bit uncomfortable. I'm going to challenge you a little bit to sit down a little bit longer than you think you can handle, because I'm building that resiliency in him. So starting in 2 years, scared that it won't be advanced enough and I'll hold her back. I totally know that feeling, especially as I said, because I was homeschooling my neighbor's daughters. I felt so much pressure, not only to keep my kids on track, but to also keep her daughters on track. I think that's very normal. I think that says a lot about the fact that you want to do it well, that you're taking it seriously, and that you're trying to really pour into their education in a way that they are going to succeed. At least for myself, I needed to just make sure that I was prepared. I needed to know what I needed to get done, and I had to be very rigid with myself in terms of not getting lax. If there were days that I wanted to kind of get off schedule, I couldn't afford to do too much of that. So if you find that you're especially nervous about them getting off track, before you start your day, and possibly even the night before, go over what you're going to teach the next day so that you feel confident that, okay, I have this much time, I want to make sure that I hit this, this, and this. I did not blindly go into the school year. I knew exactly how many lessons I needed to finish per day to be able to finish the school year when I wanted to finish it, so that my kids and my neighbor's kids can both have a summer vacation. And then again, just adjusting as needed. There was just that regular, quarterly, or monthly reassessing to figure out how much more do we have to get done. Is it possible to do homeschooling as a working mom or only stay-at-home mom? You can absolutely do homeschool as a working mom. Now that's going to look different for you because you're going to be juggling so many hats. And so for me personally, I worked about 15 hours a week and I was juggling homeschool as well. But that meant that I had to be very mindful to use my time well. I wasn't wasting it on my phone as much, and I would try to use the pockets of time that I did have to clean my house. Another thing that was helpful was the moment my husband came home, I would leave the house and go for a walk. It was my way to mentally create a boundary and a space between me working and me homeschooling, and kind of signify to my body and my mind that you are ending something now, and you're going to have 15 to 30 minutes to yourself to take some breaths and to walk and to get your mind off of the fact that you've been home all day. The more you're working, the more support you're going to want to have from your partner, from your spouse. You could potentially homeschool later in your day, or homeschool around the hours that you have to work, or use weekend hours to homeschool as well. I mean, personally, it was very stretching of me. I was able to do it, but I knew that I could not neglect taking care of myself, because I was investing so much into both my job and my kids, and they couldn't get the best out of me if I was burning out.
Okay, worried about having younger ones to tend to while trying to teach the older ones. I already said what I would do. It aligned well where Theo still takes his first nap. I don't know if that's going to continue though this next fall, because you were saying it's probably time to transition out. I'm going to milk it while I can.
You have to be prepared for interruptions. If you have a kid who is 2 to 3 years old, try to have some toys available for him. But the reality is there were times that baby would come and like rip a book if I let them. Mm-hmm. And reading specifically was actually the hardest part, because I do a lot of my schooling on the floor. Actually, all of my schooling, or at least 90% of it, was done on the floor. With practice, he eventually learned what to do because he saw the older kids doing it. Mm-hmm. So it's okay to incorporate them. Be incredibly flexible. First year schooling my son who has dyslexia. Any advice for moms of kids with learning disabilities? Find your support system. I think homeschooling in general, you need to have some level of support system, whether that is your spouse, your partner, your family, your friends. It just helps to have people around you, because there are so many times you're going to doubt that you're doing it right. Even if it's one person, connecting with one person who is doing a similar type of teaching as you are, it really helps you to feel like when you're in the pit and it's hard and the day was especially challenging and you're wondering if you're messing up your kid, it really helps to be able to go to that mom and be like, oh my gosh, today was terrible, get it out, and then recalibrate and realize like it was just a bad day and what can I do differently, get some ideas from that. Another thing is look for resources, whether that's a book you're reading, if it's a podcast. There are so many resources. The beauty of homeschooling, and especially in this day and age, in some sense it's all been done before. Show yourself a lot of grace. The goal is not to check all the boxes. The goal is to have a great positive experience, and for you to be the best mom that you can be, and for your kids to really be set up to learn and to enjoy learning for the rest of their lives.
Yes, well said. Thank you, Amanda. Maybe we'll have her in some more videos. We will see. If you guys have any video suggestions, leave them below in the comments and we'll consider executing them. Okay guys, well, love you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.